Thank you, Chris. That's a hell of an introduction. So how are y'all doing this morning? Oh, now you know what I'm about to do. How are y'all doing this morning? There it is. Because I want this to be a conversation. I'm not here to talk at you. I'm here to talk with you. We good with that? Yes. Cool. So let's start this conversation about pride with a question for y'all. Get a couple of volunteers real quick. When you hear the word pride, what does that make you think of? Anybody? What was it? Queer. Courage. Let me get accomplishment. Confidence. Defiance. Fantastic. Y'all all hit on my points for today. So that makes this easy. Okay, so let's hone in on the queer part of it, because if you read my bio, I've done a lot of activism and advocacy work in the LGBTQ community around here. I used to be the president of our local pride organization. So of course, when I think about pride, I think about that kind of pride. So on that, like, how many people in here have ever bought some pride merchandise? Something with a rainbow on it, a love wins, show of hands. Okay, good job. Y'all keep your hands up, Okay. How many of y'all have ever contacted a legislator, gone to a protest, or volunteered for an organization that supports the LGBTQ community? Ooh, good crowd. I love y'all. Fantastic. It's interesting that some of y'all didn't raise your hand on the Pride merch, but you did go out and do the thing, so that's great. Because often there's a disconnect in those two. I think in this year with the LGBTQ community, especially in places like the great state of Tennessee, have gone through, we've learned the hard way that there are some fair weather pride allies out there. I think the most visible way we saw that was because a couple of angry people said some mean things online, you had companies withdraw their support for the community. All of a sudden, they take away the rainbow logo that they had on Twitter. They no longer are going to put merchandise out in their stores. You might be able to get it online. And at a time when this is happening, this all started at the same time that we had legislation coming down that was trying to turn drag into an obscenity, that was denying and is denying gender-affirming care to trans people, especially trans youth, and a community of people who, frankly, are angry and scared. Usually some combination of the two. And we rolled into Pride Month with this. And I've been thinking about this a lot lately because it's disheartening to see allyship be so fragile. To see how easy it is also for even one person to show up to a school board meeting and try to change policy or get dedicated librarians fired, which, shout out to Caroline, because that's a good friend of mine, and she stood up for her students and their families, and the community stood behind her. But that's not always the case. Sometimes when we hit these hard points of allyship, people want to buckle. They want to hide. But when you're queer, you can't, especially when you're out. You can't just decide to not fight. You can't decide to not be defiant because your very existence is an act of defiance. Me standing up here in front of y'all is a form of protest for some people. Because we learn that the folks who are against our community are real fragile, they're real sensitive, they're gentle creatures. And they get upset when we just exist. More so now than I think ever in my life. I've seen more backlash for queer people just being in a space, just being there or being acknowledged. And we got to do something about that, right? So, I lost my thread for a second. Hold on. All right. So when we're looking at what's happening right now, we have to ask ourselves, what are we doing? Are we just sharing a hashtag? Are we just going and buying that pride sticker? Or are we actually finding ways to put ourselves out in front of these things? Because I think one of the downfalls that has been a problem within LGBTQ activism for a long time is that a lot of it's reactionary. Like, we don't take action until someone tries to take something from us. We're not proactive enough. And then a lot of times, and especially because a lot of this legislation this past year all around the country was targeted at kids, trans kids especially, when kids come into the equation, our community also tends to back down. And that is absolutely the wrong move. Or even allies don't know how to talk about it. And I wonder why. Anybody got any ideas as to why, when we talk about LGBTQ youth and supporting them, that folks are a little hesitant? A lot of fear? Okay, what do you think people are afraid of?
I think saying the wrong thing or exploring something that we're just talking about now.
So like saying the wrong thing and like is he trying to build support for it or?
Yeah, because we're kind of taught certain religious spaces, we're taught some pretty hateful things and unlearning those things. I think there's a tension there to wanting to support it, but also not knowing how, just not knowing how to set up in the right ways.
Yeah, because there's not a lot of templates for that. There's not a lot of guidance on that. Of how do we support young queer people? How do we identify their needs and the right ways to advocate? That's a good one. Anybody else have any ideas?
I think it has to do with wanting to protect. It's like the church. We have to protect everybody, but yet not allow them to express themselves on who they are, being that they are. So it's this thing of we need to protect children. I think children are capable, or at least teenagers are capable of making their own decisions.
So yeah, protecting the kids, making sure they're not being led down a path they don't want to be a part of. There's a hand up back here somewhere.
Getting canceled by your friends and family is just a motif right now. You know, so when you do speak up, it's not usually in a safe space.
Not having a safe space to speak up. Oh, body autonomy, the rights of a minor versus the rights of a parent. That right there is a strong one. Because especially when we're talking about trans youth, there's this idea that children don't know who they are, which, is true, to a degree. Like, kids, we were all still evolving, especially when we were young, like we're figuring out the world and our place in it. And then the idea of bodily autonomy, like at what age is your body really your body to make decisions about? Which is an ongoing debate for a number of reasons on a number of fronts. But then also, where does a parent's rights begin and end? Like, because yes, this child is an individual, is a human being, with their own needs and wants, but there's also a parent who is the guardian of this body and the person who inhabits it. And so with that, like, the rhetoric especially around, we'll stay focused on trans issues for now. The rhetoric around it often is led by, frankly, misinformation. Like those who are against trans healthcare and gender-affirming care, especially for youth. Great example of this is, so in other parts of the country where like this legislation has been getting pushed really hard, they've run a lot of ads. And they've done a lot of like social media campaigns. And you even have just random people out here just all beating the same drum. And the talking points that the other side has is they are saying that kids are being forced into gender-affirming care, to transition whether they want to or not. That's not true. They make it sound like it's really easy, almost like you can just go to a drive-thru and get some hormones. That's not true. They make it sound like children are having their bodies mutilated, and that's the language that they use. That's also not true. When the reality for a trans child, like let's say you have a kid who comes out like whatever age, and best case scenario, let's say they have a supportive family who's like, no, we want you to be happy, we want you to be healthy, we want to get you everything you need. That usually starts with a visit to either a physician or a psychiatrist. Eventually it will lead to a psychiatrist. And we're talking years of therapy, of heavily documented sessions, and sessions that are described by those who go through them as very intense, sometimes a little invasive, but it's questions and exploration that has to happen because it's required by certain medical standards. And at most, the most medical intervention that most people experience before reaching the age of 18 is hormone blockers, just delaying puberty, which, fun fact about that is the vast majority of patients, child patients who are prescribed hormone blockers are not trans. They're just kids who are experiencing puberty a little too early. And so the doctors say, let's delay this and give you more time until you're ready. That same principle is applied to trans children and saying, hey, maybe you're not ready for this kind of puberty. Let's put a pause on it. Let's do some work with you, make sure that you figure out what the right path is for you. And then, after years and years in that, and so much money, it's very expensive and it's not always covered by insurance. Some people are lucky and it does, and some people it's not. Then they might begin some form of hormone replacement therapy, maybe. But no one's going through surgeries, no one's having these massive, irreversible medical procedures. They also like to talk about people who've detransitioned. They like to trot that out. It is such a small percentage. More people regret having knee surgery than transitioning. That's an actual fact, like within people who have gone through these procedures. But yeah, they'll find the one out of however many thousands, and they'll put them on the evening news. They'll trot them out to go speak at events. While ignoring the actual experiences of trans people. In reality, when trans people do get the care that they need, it is life-saving, literally. It can prevent all kinds of mental illness. It can prevent suicide. It is a better quality of life for these kids. So now we have that documented. That is from medical research, that's psychiatric research, that's lived experiences. You can find thousands of examples of this. And yet, when some random person shows up and says whatever, and they're running ads where they literally have like floating pairs of scissors coming at the camera talking about genital mutilation, they get credit with no backing, no research, nothing. They have literally nothing to stand on, but we cede ground to them because we're nervous about talking about queer kids. But what about pride? What about being proud to be queer? Like there's a paradox there. We can sit there and say, we're proud to be queer, or we're proud of queer people, and we're going to go to the parade and the festival. We'll go, tip the drag queens at the party. We'll do all the things. But then we turn right around and we are ashamed to tell a kid that it's okay. Not just okay. No. Scratch that. It's not okay. It's wonderful that you are who you are. We let them come into our school board meetings with some of the same lies. One person changing policy, changing funding, putting people's jobs at risk, people who day in, day out actually care about those kids. Because they're supportive, they're the ones who get put on the chopping block. And a lot of us will stand by and say nothing. That doesn't sound like pride. So if we're really proud, we got to be consistent about that, right? We have to always challenge anything that would bring shame into the equation. Because here's the things we have on our side. We have, one, first and foremost, actual love. Love for people, love for our communities, love for future generations. We have actual facts. We have science and research. We have people who can sit there and say empirically, this is the reality that backs up your existence, your identity. Shouldn't have to need that, but we do. And we can say that we know the outcomes are better when we do show that support. When people have a supportive community, when they have people who actually make them feel proud to just be, they're happy, they're healthy. And when they need things, they know to ask for them. They know they can go to ask for them. They know they have safe spaces to go into and say, hey, this is where I'm at, this is what I need. Now, flip side of that. So I mentioned a minute ago ads with giant scary scissors. A certain political party in this country has put millions of dollars into these marketing campaigns, right? For everything from specific ballot measures that had to be put up for a public vote, usually around gender-affirming care for youth, and in some cases just gender-affirming care, period, wanting to ban it entirely in the state, hi Tennessee. And then sometimes for particular candidates who are making these issues like, first and foremost in their platforms that they're running on. And they run these ads in different districts and under different circumstances, but the message is generally the same. They just might change some names or like whatever the bill number is and just recycle the whole reel. And then people see these because it's everywhere. It's when they get online, it's popping up in their social media feed, it's on TV, it's on their streaming service, and it's being talked about a lot. Then people go to the polls, and what do you think happens when people go to the polls in these places where these ads have been running all day, every day, and just keep popping up? Anybody want to guess? I'll tell you. They lose. They lose even though they are outspending and outpacing those who are trying to protect trans people. But when you make anti-trans ideology your talking point, you push it out there, we've seen over and over and over again, people go to the polls and they vote against you. Why might that be? It's not a rhetorical question. I mean, really, think about that. Why might it be? If you're seeing this all the time, this idea keeps getting pushed out to you, what might make you go, I don't like that?
Because if it's trans this time, it might be something you believe in next time.
If it's trans this time, it might be something you believe in next time. That's good. That's a good one. Anyone else got an idea? Like, why? Okay, I like that. Because there's that idea of they're coming for trans people because trans people are such a small population. And the misconception is that because there's so few of them, you can do what you want, which is actually an American tradition. You go after whatever you think the smallest, weakest group is, and you monopolize on it. Well, there's been some polling around this, around the country, and looking across party lines and all other demographics, asking people what they think about certain trans issues, like everything from like access to gender-affirming care, to like having birth markers changed to align with their identities. And the thing is, most people are not against it. You have a chunk of people who are for it, who are like, trans rights all the way, 100%, ride or die, I got you. And then you have a chunk who are basically indifferent. They're like, either I don't know enough to have an opinion, or I just don't ever think about it. And then you have this small group over here who are like, I hate trans people, ew. So if we're seeing all that, I just want us to think about that reality there. That like there's data that's being built up. And granted, the research is still kind of shallow. It's fairly recent, but it's trending in that direction. We're seeing in the real world, the more you say you hate trans people, the less likable you are. Which I think that's a takeaway. Don't be hateful. You might make friends. And we're seeing that it's also not something that most Americans want to take away from somebody else. Like the actual thought process tends to be, this is between a person and their doctor, right? Because Americans, we are very independent people. That's kind of a whole American thing, is like we are all islands. So a lot of folks even just fall on the fact of like, well, I don't know, but like that's between them and their doctor. Or if it's a kid, it's between their family and their doctor. Like that's for them to figure out. We shouldn't be making laws saying you can and can't have whatever medical procedure it is that you need. Like, I'm not your doctor, right? And then you have the people who want to use, faith-based arguments. And my favorite response to that is, I don't go to your church. It's surprising how many people actually get upset when you say that to them. I'm like, have you ever seen me there? Because if you have, I'm doing some serious sleepwalking. Please turn me around and push me back towards my home. And so I think there's an opportunity there, though, knowing these things, that we can push back harder. We can do more, and we can do more also than just responding to when someone shows up and attacks a resource within the community or a need or a right. We can push further. Because before you even take away what's already there, there's still needs. Like, our community still needs things. Like, the entire LGBTQ alphabet. Like, there's that thing of, like, everybody was real big on marriage equality. We got that, and a lot of folks went home. And it's like, we still got issues around adoption. We still got issues around spousal rights, even with the marriage license. Like, there's a lot of things that can be still worked on. And even just protection from harassment. Like, there's this laundry list of stuff that we could be doing. But I think we can win. I know we can win. Scratch that. I know we can win. And we've been gaining ground. And Pride's been a big part of that. That visibility, that being out there, buying the rainbow sticker and putting it on your car. It does something. It puts it out there. But then more so finding the ways in your community that you can support. Like, around here, going to events at Seed Theater. Does everybody know what Seed Theater is? Show of hands if you don't know what Seed Theater is. Okay, quite a few. Okay, so Seed Theater, real quick. The Seed Theater is essentially a LGBTQ resource center for folks here in Chattanooga. They do have a particular focus on youth and families. They also host support groups. They also hold events, a lot of really fun events. They do potlucks and markets and drag shows and all kinds of fun things, and then full theatrical productions every now and again. So Seed Theater, y'all should check them out. They do a lot of really great work, and I believe they're entering a fundraising season right now, so if you got some change, toss it their way. But like things like that, supporting our Pride organization, like takes a lot of money and a lot of work for a volunteer board to put on a huge festival, I know. Support their work, make a donation. If you got a company, sponsor them, toss a little cash their way. Do these things to show your support in the community and then reflect it back by always showing that support, by making a commitment to not just do it when it's convenient, because there's a lot at stake. And of course, one more thing before I wrap this up. Do all the things. Vote, protest, get into arguments, challenge ideas every chance you get, and do it proudly. You have to overcome that fear. Because, actually, a conversation I was having with Chris the other day, we were talking about like pride and coming out. And I share with Chris something that I don't share often, but the fact that I believe that coming out is a selfish act. But I don't mean that in a bad way. I think we stay closeted for other people. We stay closeted because we're afraid of rejection. We're afraid that we might lose our family, our friends, our job, our house, our lives. We stay closeted because of how other people are going to react. But each and every one of us, we come out because we need it. We don't come out for anybody else. You don't come out because to make your mom happy. She might be happy, but that's a bonus. You do it for you. You may do it in spite of knowing you could very well lose any or all of those things. And so once you do it, you keep doing it, and you keep doing it for you every time, in every room, in every situation. But for allies to be supportive, that has to be a selfless act. You have nothing to gain from it. Maybe the happiness and the improvement of quality of life is something you care about, that's a thing. But you personally, directly, no, you don't get anything from it. In fact, you also may risk losing family, losing friends, jobs, home, life. That's the reality of it. To be an ally, you got to be willing to put that on the line. If you really believe in it, if you're really proud. And honestly, I think that the rewards are worth it. Just thinking of how I've been in Chattanooga since 2001 and thinking how far this city has come for the LGBT community. I mean, for perspective, the first Pride Parade here was in 1993, and some people tried to schedule a Klan rally in conjunction with the Pride Parade and literally wanted a route to intersect with the Pride Parade, basically staging a sanctioned riot. The city tried to deny the Pride organization the right to have the festival or the parade. Granted, with the help of some city council members, that was shot down under First Amendment because, during that parade, I have friends who were there who had bricks and bottles thrown at them as they were going down the street in the Pride Festival in 1993, by the way. 93. not even 10 years before I set foot in this city. But now, oh, and more on that, the context of that Pride too, there was so much violence and opposition to Pride being in downtown Chattanooga that they moved it out to a park well outside of town. Like, we would go party in the woods, which was fun. I mean, there were upsides to it. Like, you know, it was you know, you weren't directly in the sun, you had shade. Like, it was, you know, people brought grills and stuff. It was kind of fun. It had bonuses. And it wasn't until, I want to say like 2007 or 8, that they brought it back downtown. And even that move made people nervous. And then it wasn't until I was president that we brought it back to the riverfront. And even that move made people nervous, even though our history was already there for the community. People were nervous about, like, one of the first things somebody told me when I was going to move Pride back down to the riverfront was, and I'm hand to God, what about snipers? I was like, who's hiring a sniper? But that was rooted in a lot of folks who remembered that 1993. They remembered that. But we went ahead with it anyway, and I was like, well, we'll do what we can, like, but we're going to go forward. Because when we move in fear, we don't gain much. When we work in pride, I think we gain everything. Thank you.